Classic consensus methods from before Bitcoin were fast and had finality, whereas Bitcoin is slow and only provides probabilistic finality. However, they were permissioned and limited the number of participants that could vote in consensus, meaning they weren't suited for decentralized cryptocurrencies. Algorand uses a consensus method called pure proof of stake, which takes those old consensus methods and adapts them in a way to make them permissionless and to massively expand the number of people who can participate in consensus, making them suitable for cryptocurrencies, whilst also not having to sacrifice much of the speed or finality from these methods. In this video, I'll go through how pure proof of stake works. If we look at the classic Byzantine fault-tolerant consensus methods, we can see that they start with a client making a request, which for a blockchain could be to add a block. There are then 2 rounds of votes between all the participants, and if more than 2/3 of the participants approve the request, then they have achieved consensus and the request can be completed. 2 rounds are needed in case an attacker has split the network and told both sides different things. In the first round, participants will pre-commit to a vote to make sure there aren't any double votes for conflicting requests, and in the second round, they commit to the vote. This method is the basis for how pure proof of stake works, but as it is, there are issues. Firstly, there are a lot of messages being sent between all the participants. Each round, each participant needs to send a message to all the other participants with their vote. When there are a small number of participants, this is fine, but as the number of participants starts to get bigger, performance slows down exponentially, and these messages end up using a lot of bandwidth. To get around this issue, Algorand uses a cryptographic technique called a verifiable random function, to both select a random person to produce a block, and to select a random subsample of participants to take part in voting. With this technique, even if there are millions of participants, every time there's a vote, only a small subsample need to take part. Due to it being random, the subsample should be a good enough representation of all the participants. Verifiable random functions were invented by Algorand's founder, Silvio Micali, and are the key innovation that allowed him to expand the number of participants that can take part in consensus. A VRF works somewhat like a digital signature, where each participating node will generate a public-private key pair. There will also be a piece of publicly known data. Using the private key and the piece of public data, a pseudo-random number is generated alongside a proof. Then, using the public data, the pseudo-random number, the public key, and the proof, other nodes can verify that the random number was indeed generated by the owner of the private key. This means the VRF can be used as a lottery system, where all participating nodes will take the same piece of public data and run it through a VRF with their private key, to then produce a random number as an output. You could then have anyone with a random number less than say 100 as a winner. If a node produces a winning number, they can then share it with their proof and public key, and then all the other nodes can confirm it is indeed a valid winning number produced by the owner of the private key. A big strength of VRFs is that until the winner announces they have won by showing their random number and proof, it's impossible to predict who has won, so winners can't be targeted by an attacker. Now let's go back to the classic consensus model to see how Algorand uses VRFs. First, clients will send their transactions to a few nodes, which will then be propagated to all the nodes in the network. Nodes will then run a VRF using the VRF output from the previous block as the piece of public data, as it is unpredictable and can't be computed in advance. If they find a winning VRF, they will create a block from the transactions they have received and send it to the other nodes in the network. However, there isn't really a way to guarantee that there will be only one winner of the VRF, or to guarantee that there will even be a winner at all. So Algorand sets the thresholds of this VRF to almost guarantee there will be at least one winner. Unfortunately, this means on average there are around 26 winners that are able to produce a block. These winners will all submit their block to the network to go through consensus. From the multiple blocks that have been submitted, nodes now need to decide a winner. As long as the transactions and signatures in these blocks are valid, then any of these blocks can be chosen. The default way Algorand makes a decision on which block to pick is by choosing the one with the lowest random number. However, you can't just have each node pick the block that they see with the lowest random number, as not all nodes may see the same blocks, so they also need to reach consensus over this decision. To reach consensus over which block has the lowest random number is where the rounds of voting from the classic consensus models comes in. However, as we established before, the classic models require a lot of network bandwidth and don't scale well with more participants, so instead Algorand uses the VRFs again, but this time to create committees to participate in the voting rounds instead of having all nodes vote. When a node receives a block, they will wait a set amount of time until they should have received all the submitted blocks and will then run another VRF. If they win the VRF, they then send a vote to the other nodes for which block they think has the lowest random number. For this VRF, the thresholds are set, so a set committee size is chosen, no matter how many participating nodes there are. Even with a billion nodes, the VRF can be set so only around 1,000 nodes win each time, meaning the network bandwidth stays constant and doesn't increase with more participants. However, because the VRFs produce a random subsample of nodes, the subsample should be a good representation of the opinion of all the nodes, but it's not exact, so a high threshold of nodes is needed for a vote to go to the next round. In the classic models, 2/3 of the nodes are needed to vote on a block to go to the next round, but due to random subsampling, if an attacker has 33% of the nodes, they may be randomly chosen for more than 33% of the committee, so a high threshold is needed to keep the same safety guarantees. Algorand has it set to roughly 75% after testing various threshold values. After the first round of voting, there should be 1 or 2 clear winning blocks. If there aren't, then honest nodes should vote for an empty block. There is then another VRF run to create a committee for the second round of voting. As long as a supermajority of the nodes are honest, then after 2 rounds, only one winner should be produced, which can then be added to the blockchain. Because only one winner can be produced, it means there are no forks, so the block can be considered final immediately. If agreement over a block can't be found within a set time for whatever reason, the network will pause and nodes will enter recovery mode. In recovery mode, nodes will send recovery messages to the network requesting what should be done next. Either attempt to process the last known block, or propose a new block. After nodes have voted with a supermajority on what to do, the network will continue. If the majority of nodes are honest, the network will recover very quickly. However, Algorand favours safety over liveness, so if consensus can't be reached, it will continue paused in recovery mode until a later point when any malicious actors may be potentially removed via a governance vote. However, even using this method for consensus, there is still another big problem. What happens if an attacker creates millions of nodes to participate and becomes the majority of the network? To make a consensus method usable for decentralized cryptocurrencies, a publicly available scarce resource is required to protect against this type of Sybil attack. For this, Algorand uses stake. Algorand has a max supply of 10 billion Algo tokens, and so the Algo token is a scarce resource and is publicly available. This means they can be used for Sybil protection, as they are something that is difficult for an attacker to get a large amount of. The way Algorand uses stake as the scarce resource is first by having all participating nodes register that they are staking for a staking transaction, where they register their participation key for the VRF and the address with their tokens. Then they have adapted the VRF so that the number of votes they win relates to the amount of tokens they have staked, based on a binomial distribution. This means participating nodes with more stake have a proportionately higher chance of winning multiple votes from the VRF, and means if an attacker wanted to set up millions of nodes but didn't have any stake, they wouldn't win any of the VRFs. And so as long as more than 2/3 of the stake stays honest, an attacker shouldn't be able to get the majority of the network. However, with proof of stake, there is the well-known nothing at stake problem, which affects any proof of stake protocol. For Algorand, this means the winners of the VRF are able to either post or vote on as many blocks as they want, without any punishment. If a large enough percentage of the stake were to vote on multiple blocks at once, then multiple blocks could be finalised at once, and potentially allowing double spends. For now this isn't really an issue, as most stakers are honest, and to consistently double spend would be a deliberate choice where someone would be using altered node software, and only really becomes an issue if more than 1/3 of the stake becomes malicious. The nothing at stake problem also brings up another attack vector called long-range attacks. This is where an attacker acquires the keys to a large amount of stake from the past, and creates a fork from this point, where they are the majority stakeholder. They will use valid VRF keys and produce what appears to be a valid chain to anyone that wasn't online, so any new nodes joining the network may be tricked into following the attacker's chain. To prevent this, Algorand has the nodes use the participating key they registered to generate a new key for each round, and in the default software, nodes then delete the keys after they are used, so it will be difficult for an attacker to get a hold of old keys for the attack. This does make the attack very unlikely, but there isn't a way to know for sure that nodes will delete their old keys, so the attack is still possible. If Algorand were to become a global settlement layer for finance, there would surely be a black market buying old keys and easy to install add-ons for nodes to stop deleting the keys, so it's not a surefire defense. However, it's not hard to add weak subjectivity like Ethereum, so if Algorand were to ever get big enough where this would be an issue, the fix would be easy. The other major part of consensus is incentives, and for this, Algorand is taking a risk by offering no staking rewards, so there is no incentive to set up a validator node, other than wanting to support the network. Initially, they did have a staking reward to get some people to set up nodes, but this has already been phased out. Currently, around 24% of the tokens are being staked, which is low compared to other protocols like Cardano, that also don't require locking up your tokens or slashing, but do offer staking rewards. So it seems like Algorand is sacrificing security by not offering this incentive. An attacker would currently need around 12% of the circulating supply for an attack, which would cost around $200 million when I'm recording the video. Maybe this much security is enough. It does seem like a very unusual decision though, as most cryptocurrencies are trying to maximize security. Even the founder admits he's not sure if it will work without the incentive. We'll have to wait and see to see if it becomes a bigger issue. To summarize, pure proof of stake works by taking the classical BFT consensus methods and assigning each node participating with a weight based on their stake. Each participating node will run VRFs based on the VRF output from the previous block to get the chance to produce the next block. Multiple winners will be found, and the nodes will go through 2 rounds of voting to reach consensus on which block has the lowest random number. For each round of voting, another VRF is run to determine which nodes will be part of the committee to vote. If there is agreement from 75% of the committee on the winner, then the block can be added to the blockchain. Overall, pure proof of stake is based on well-studied models, which they have adapted to be decentralized and work with a larger number of participants. It's not as robust as longest chain wins models, who can survive with a larger number of faulty or malicious participants, but it is able to provide finality, and at a much faster speed, which for many applications is well worth the trade-off. And so pure proof of stake helps make Algorand a very high performance blockchain. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and subscribe if you want to catch my future content.